Recovery podcast is real life stories from everyday people in recovery. From mental health issues, trauma, substance misuse, and behavioural addictions. Please visit the website www.lifeinrecovery.co.uk for links to social media and a range of books written by your podcast host, Ren Coy.
Hello and welcome to Life in Recovery podcast, episode 74 with me, Ren Coy. I hope you're doing well out there. Christmas is just around the corner and it can be a really difficult time of year for some people. So I just hope that you keep yourself safe and hopefully the podcast will give you that, that extra boost in your recovery to keep you safe over the festive period. The Life in Recovery podcast is sponsored by Dennis Berry Life Coaching. So Dennis is a certified life coach who's been working with people all over the world for over 15 years. And he can work with anybody, anywhere via Zoom. He's an expert in addiction recovery and life mastery, and he's been clean and sober himself since 2003. And he can help you with your journey through sobriety and help you to achieve inner peace, success, and fulfill your life mission, whatever that may be. If you're sick and tired of being sick and tired and you're ready to make changes in your life, book your first free consultation by visiting www.dennisberry.com and use the code words Life in Recovery to get 10% off your next 3 sessions. The podcast is also sponsored by a former podcast guest and founder of sugaraddiction.com, Michael Collins. That was episode 20. He's helped thousands of addicts get and stay sober since 1985. During that time, his special passion has been to help recovering addicts who've turned to sugar after they got sober. Many recovering addicts struggle with weight gain, diabetes and other health issues that all trace back to an addictive use of sugar. In most cases, quitting sugar is even harder than quitting drugs and alcohol. If you think you might need some help with your sugar addiction, Michael is offering a free copy of his book, The Last Resort Sugar Detox Guide, to all my listeners. Just visit www.sugaraddiction.com/lifeinrecovery and download your free copy. And if you're really serious, check out his 30-day Sugar Freedom Challenge whilst you are there. The podcast is also sponsored by the Recovery Coach Training Academy from Helios Recovery. And this is for anyone who's interested in becoming a recovery coach. So recovery coaching is a form of strength-based, healing-centered support for persons in or seeking recovery from substance or behavioural addictions. Similar to life and business coaching, recovery coaching is a type of partnership where the person in or seeking recovery self-directs their recovery, while the coach provides their expertise in supporting successful change. Recovery coaching focuses on achieving any goals that are important to the individual. Helios Recovery Service is offering a digital recovery coach academy and ethics training on January the 25th to January the 30th, 2021. This training includes core competencies for recovery coaches with additional training on ethics, boundaries, medication-assisted treatment, gambling and more. Recognised as the original and leading recovery offering of its kind, the Recovery Coach Academy is a pioneering new approach to healing people's lives that is unlike any other training. Visit www.heliosrecovery.com and when you register, use the code words Life in Recovery to get 10% off the package price. Please don't forget that you can financially support the podcast if you're feeling generous. Go to www.patreon.com/Life in Recovery and there's a few different packages to choose from there. I enjoy making the avatars for my Patreon supporters, and also if you want to dig deep you can also appear on the podcast yourself, so check that out, patreon.com/Life in Recovery. Now this episode is with a woman by the name of Emily Yarbrough, who has been sober for just under a year, but she's been in recovery for about 4 or 5 years and has been battling her addictions. She is actually the wife of one of my previous guests and Patreon supporter, Anon Yarbrough. Shout out to Anon. And this was just a really, really great conversation. Very insightful in terms of, what to do and what not to do to recover from addiction. And we just had a good laugh, and it was really nice to meet Emily and to chat with her. and I hope you enjoy listening to this podcast as much as I enjoyed speaking with Emily.
My name's Emily, and I am an addict. I'm here in Boise, Idaho. I'm 39, almost 40, and my addiction started off, the feelings and the emotional side. Looking back, started off pretty young. I was born in Texas. I'm adopted. I was adopted when I was 10 days old. And when I was 5, my mom and my adopted father got divorced. And then at 7, my mom married my stepdad. I was the only adopted child. And so from a very early age, I was different. And I was treated different, and when my stepdad came along, he was abused as a child, and so he carried that with him, as an adult. He was very demanding, very emotionally abusive. He really, he loved with all of his heart, but he also very much criticized with the equal amount of his heart. So there was and he and my mom, were kind of toxic off and on for 20 years. There was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of name calling. There was a lot of not enough. My brothers and sisters came along, and they really had their nucleus family, and it's still that way to today. I had some early on childhood trauma. I had some very physical bouts with my stepfather. 2 of them that stand out the most was when I was in the 5th grade. He was mad at me, and I was doing something wrong, and he threw me into my room and slammed my face against the footboard of my bed, and it broke my nose and cut up my face really bad. And because he was in law enforcement, of course, we couldn't tell anybody, and I missed a week worth of school. And another one that really stands out to me was I misspelled my spelling words, and I don't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I was eating at the time, and he picked up my plate of food and smeared it all over my face and then threw the plate at the wall. So that's just kind of some of the turmoil I grew up with. My adopted father really kind of left my life early on. Around 7 is when he married his second wife, and so I kind of learned very early on that I am expendable. And I'm easily replaced, and that I am not enough. And so there became this switch in my head that from then on, I kept trying to chase, what can I do to make somebody love me enough to stay?
Yeah.
My life, early on, I learned love with conditions, and I feel like that has stuck through, to me through my whole life. I really hated my home life. At 17, I joined the Navy. I was in the Navy for a couple years. When I was in the Navy, I was sexually assaulted by another person in the Navy, and as in true fashion, we don't talk about things like that, and so that got brushed under the rug. When I was 19, I got pregnant with my son. When I was 20, I married my first husband. We got married on our first date, which is crazy, right? We were very young, and to this day, I will tell you, I still love him very much. We were married for 15 years. We have 3 beautiful children, 2 daughters and my son, and we just grew up and grew apart. And so there's really not much, there's not much negativity in that relationship with him. We just grew up into very different people, and the marriage just ran its course. When I was 21 is when I really first, when I was in the Navy, I drank a lot, but I was, in my head, I was young, and, that's just what young people do. When I was 21, I started dancing in the adult entertainment field. And, because like it said, with things that I just don't really want to get into right now from my childhood, one of the things I also learned that in life is that if I want something, or I want somebody to be nice to me, or I want a situation to end, that my body is my leverage. And then it doesn't belong to me. It's there for other people. So I started dancing around 21, and in the strip clubs is where it was in the bathroom of a strip club is the first time I ever used anything other than alcohol. And from that moment on, something switched in my brain, and it was like I had found the cure. Like I didn't have to feel the negativity anymore. I didn't have to be myself anymore, and this alter ego could come out. And so I went down that road for about a year and a half, really, really hardcore. I walked away from my children at that point in time. My children were 4, 3, and 1, and I walked away from them for a full year. I gave my son to my mother, and my ex-husband took my daughters, because the disease of addiction is so strong that it will make you do things that you never thought that you would do.
What were you using?
I was at that point using opiates and methamphetamines.
Yeah.
And also, drinking in between. I really enjoyed pain pills. I really loved, like I said, meth, cocaine, pretty much anything that would take my mind off of the reality. I really believe at that point I had postpartum depression from my youngest, and I had my children so close together. I actually, in between my 2 daughters, I lost a baby girl in there too. And I was so young that everything just got so messed up in my brain that drugs and alcohol really became my security blanket. Say that again?
Took away all the pain.
Yeah, and it turned everything off, and I could just be a completely different person. And so that rock bottom hit when I didn't have my children, and I really wasn't living anywhere, kind of bouncing between places, and I was actually assaulted again, and ended up in the hospital that time. And I didn't have any place to go and nobody to call. And the doctor gave me a pamphlet for like a women's shelter. And the stipulation for that women's shelter was that I had to be clean. And so I said, okay. And I started going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings. I got clean. I got my family back. And I was clean for about 3 years. I very much believe in the 12 steps. I find a lot of healing in them. I find a lot of camaraderie. I'm a very social person. So I had to replace the social aspect of my using with the social aspect of recovery.
Yeah.
Somewhere around 3 years, I got a little complacent, and I decided that since everything happened to me so young, that maybe I wasn't really an addict, and as long as I stayed away from drugs, I could drink. So in 2009, I relapsed and started drinking again. And it took a few years for me to reach a place of back in full-blown active addiction. Like I actually managed to quote unquote socially drink and be normal for a couple years. And And then I found my best friend, the doctor, and everything was just, released all over again. And I'm one of those addicts that I'm super addicted to anything and more. And I hate to feel. So it's like I would start using a substance and I would feel a little out of control on that one. So I would switch to something else because I was sure in my head I could maintain. So that's when, like, prescription stimulants, I really, really, really had a battle with, like Adderall, pain pills. And then I found Xanax, and I had a 6-year battle with that. And, like, life just got so messed up and so upside down. I didn't know which way was up. So around that time is when I divorced my first husband, and I decided that a huge lateral change would just make everything better. And I packed up and I moved from Amarillo, Texas, which is in the panhandle of Texas, way down there, and I moved 1,800 miles away up here to Boise, because I thought that was going to fix everything, right? I came out here to get off all the pills, and then I switched back to alcohol. In 2015, I met my current husband, who is also an addict. And we just kind of melded into each other. And we got married in 2017. We'd been together for 2 years. And progressively, the two of us just fed off of each other in our, it is alcohol that really, he only does alcohol. I love drugs, and the more alcohol I consumed, the more I could convince myself to do other things. Our marriage became very hostile and very, very abusive. We were both very toxic and did very ugly things to each other. And it just kept progressively going until in June of 2019, it ended in a very, very traumatic domestic violence situation in which I left the house on a stretcher with a broken nose and some other very awful physical things. And so I took that, and all this time my kids, were in the background of my life just witnessing all of this stuff. And I'm just looking back, I'm mortified at what I had put my children through and the behaviors that I taught them, were acceptable. Because when I say it was toxic, I'm telling you it was not just him. I got just as toxic. I feel like I can't tell my story without telling my side and my culpability, in the actions that led to that awful, awful night. I definitely take full responsibility for my part in leading up to it. And then after that happened, I felt such a sense of abandonment. We weren't living together. I really wanted my marriage to work, and he was in his full-blown active addiction, and he was doing his thing, and he chose that at the time. And I'm not mad at him for it. As somebody who is also an addict, I understand that he was in his addiction too, but I just felt like such an abandonment. And then what I did, instead of trying to get better for myself, I took it as an excuse to just go as far down that rabbit hole as I could go. I got really bad, anything and more. If I could use it, I was using it. I was drinking from morning to night. I didn't want to feel. I was going out. I was going to bars. I was driving. I got 2 DUIs within 6 weeks of each other, which is just awful and so embarrassing. And then about October of 2019, well, it was October 13th, 2019, I was so dark and so messed up that I tried to take my own life, and my daughters couldn't get in the room the next morning, and they called a friend who basically had to, bust down the bathroom door, and I was on the floor. I had slit my wrists, and I was in a really bad situation as far as my life, and and that still wasn't enough to get me to stop using. Just everything was so messed up inside, and I wanted help, and I wanted to stop, but like most addicts, we don't always know where to go or how to begin, or the thought of stopping seems so scary because it's all we know. I went into outpatient treatment in October. In January, I got sentenced on my DUIs. January 8th was the first day in many, many years that I went a full day with no substances. And that was January 8th, 2020. And January 8th, 2021, I'll have 1 year clean. Life is funny, and being an addict is hard, and just the way our brain works it's amazing to me. I'm so glad that I have the 12 steps. Like I said, I'm a huge advocate for whatever 12-step program a person needs, AA, NA. I found my home in NA. I have a sponsor, I have peers, I work steps. Life is hard, like it's getting clean was not like this magic fix of, oh my gosh, everything is going to get better. It doesn't, or it has, but it doesn't. It's not just like a magic. Like I have to really work at it.
Well, all it does is it equips you with the tools to be able to deal with life on life's terms, doesn't it? And nobody said that life was fair, and nobody promises that life is going to be great all the time. And I think that when we have that kind of start realization that it is going to be difficult, and there's going to be many ups and downs, it's then that you can really dig in and start working the program, and using the tools in your daily life. I mean, I've had so many ups and downs and so many difficult periods in recovery, and actually I've been through one recently, if I'm honest. I mean, I've been through a very ever since the COVID situation has kicked in. I mean, initially I found it quite easy to deal with, and then the last month or so I've been really kind of struggling with a few emotions. I think like being kind of in the house 24/7 with my partner, and not having the usual outlets, like being able to go for a meal, or
Right.
like just go and socialize with people, all that kind of stuff, because that's kind of not available at the moment. I mean, I'm very lucky, similar to you, that I don't know if the meetings are up and running back in Boise, but around here, with the meetings are up and running again now. So
Yes, and I was, and we've actually had them up and running for a while. We were able to hold some outside during the summer.
Yeah.
I had 60 days clean when the COVID shut down, and being stuck in the house, and that new, and having to like connect and reach out through Zoom, which I was super grateful at the time to have, because at least it was something. But just that being away, and just the stress, and I think there's a lot of emotions that have been tied with the COVID, and just the state of people. I'm so grateful that our meetings are up and running, because I'm telling you, there's days that those meetings, they save my life. I have a core group of people, and I have some really awesome support system of people. I have two best friends that like they own my soul, and they stuck by me like they're literally the only people that have ever in my life shown me unconditional love. I have these two friends, and they stuck by me through all my craziness. And I can tell you, without them, I wouldn't be alive today. And they're super supportive of my journey through the 12 steps. But like, I'm just one of those people. I can't not have people. And so the emotions that run and the fear that have been running with COVID have definitely made the emotional roller coaster of this first year of recovery very interesting. This time is very different than the first time I got clean. So many emotions and so many lies our heads tell us, you know, as addicts, that it's nice to have people who've either been through it or can give you a different insight and look on life through the recovery process. You know, well, it's really...
They say that connection is the antidote to addiction, don't they? And what you just said there, like having those people around you, it literally, it's like, well, it's your new medicine, isn't it? You know, the bad medicine was the drugs that you used to use, and then your new medicine is that connection with your fellows, and, you know, like not having that. I mean, I suppose what's become very apparent to me during the lockdown periods is that, you know, the spiritual malady, restless irritability and discontentment, that is my base kind of way of being, you know, and when one of those things is exacerbated, so if I'm feeling discontent with something, or I'm feeling irritable, or I'm feeling very restless, that is when I'm in like that danger zone of the illness starts like really kicking off, and then it turns into all sorts of things like anger, or I don't know, just usually anger is the one that comes up for me, and I start to feel very I start to kind of lash out verbally and just not be a very nice person to be around, or start whinging and being negative all the time, you know. And it just made me realize that I need that connection. You know, even though I've been around for over 10 years, I still need that connection. And the amount of people that have relapsed and you know, gone out there drinking or gone out there using during this time has been absolutely unbelievable. But I get it, you know, if they're stuck at home all day on their own and they don't have that connection, and possibly they don't really have a very strong program, and they might have just relied on the meetings a little bit too much, then it's no wonder people go out and drink again or use again.
Oh, no, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. And the disease of addiction is so, now that I'm in it and I'm working my steps, it's so scary. And I almost daily have to remind myself that myself and every addict I come in contact with that day, we're walking miracles. Like this, so many people's lives are lost and because of this. And I just, when I get angry. I get, mine isn't necessarily anger. Mine is more anxiety. Like I get, maybe the anxiety causes, you know, a little bit of the lash and where I seem angry, that I have to just take a deep breath and just be so grateful for where I am today, because I'm one of those people, like I get lost in my head. And, you know, I'm in a weird situation right now. My landlord wanted to sell my house and I couldn't find a new one. So I moved in with some friends who I'm super grateful that is happening. But like, I don't have my space. I feel like nothing's ever going to get better. And I can just go down that rabbit hole. And I just have to stop and just be grateful that I'm, one, as much as I hate to feel the feelings, that I'm able to feel the feelings, and two, that I do have a full program of sponsorship, step work, you know, meditation with my higher power, who people laugh at me, but I refer to my higher power as Sky Daddy. You know, that I have that connection to be able to kind of put all of those things together, because my program, you know, it can't rely solely on meetings. You know, I have to have some other footwork and effort and, you know, things put in place to continue to grow as a human being, or then I just become stagnant. and stagnant is a very dangerous place for me.
It was interesting what you said there as well about the anxiety, because I suppose ultimately anxiety is the physical manifestation of fear, isn't it? And every single negative emotion that we experience comes from that place of fear. And that's like when I was at a meeting the other night actually, and I was sharing that I'd been feeling very angry these last kind of few weeks, and it keeps coming out it's sideways, and I've recognised it, and I'm starting to do the work on it now. And I was speaking to my sponsor, and my sponsor just said, well, if you're angry, then you're fearful about something. So what is it that you're fearful about? And that I haven't kind of got to the bottom of yet, but it is not wrong, and I think that we're living in a very, very strange time at the moment, and fear has never been more rife across the whole world by the looks of it. From especially if you tap into the media, which I try not to do as much as possible.
Right.
But it is, isn't it? It's just like you can just see that there is this kind of like global fear mongery, and everybody's tapping into the kind of negativity that brings. And I think we're very lucky, the fact that we've got recovery, and like you've got your higher power, because the antidote to that fear, in my opinion, is 100% faith. Like faith and love is the antidote to that emotion of fear. And it's very difficult to transform the fear into faith or love when you don't have a program. So again, we're very lucky, and I often share how grateful I am to the 12 steps and the 12-step fellowships, because I just think it's like it is like when they say, oh, you nobody's ever given a handbook for life. Well, it literally is like that. Blue book of Alcoholics Anonymous is like being given a handbook for life, and it has certainly saved my life, and it sounds like it's saving yours as well.
It does. It's funny. I can, and I have, we have our basic text, our blue book, and I can read it over and over again, and based on what I'm going through, or what transition I'm in on that day, as to what stands out to me and what has meaning. And I think that it's amazing that the forefathers of recovery had that knowledge and that intuition to be able to write such great words that they really are timeless, and they really do fit in just about every situation that you're in. And I find great comfort in that I feel like I'm not, gonna 5 years from now stop getting something, from our literature. And I think it's just amazing that those people were able to do that for us, like the courage and the strength, and just the willingness to let their higher power in to like produce these words that have reached and touched so many people globally. Because recovery is so much bigger than just one person. It's all of us, and it's just, I sit in awe of it sometimes. It
is amazing. I mean, I've just picked up the big book recently and started reading it again, because apart from when I'm kind of going through it with sponsees, I don't tend to, like have it by my bedside like I used to in early recovery. And it doesn't matter how long you've been around, that it always is just profound. Like, I must have read that book, I don't know, God knows how many times, hundreds of times, over and over. And even now it's still just completely profound, because when you find something that just explains you,
right?
You're reading it and you're just thinking, yeah, that's me. It's just incredible. It was an incredible stroke of genius, really, like you said, from the forefathers who wrote it. And as you said, like the basic text of NA and all the different literature that now kind of pervades all the different 12-step fellowships. Obviously, it all came from there originally, and it's been kind of built on, and expanded on and used in the appropriate ways for those different for those different addictions. But it's all pretty much saying the same stuff. I mean, I've been to NA meetings and I've read the basic text. I've been to OA meetings. I've been to SLA meetings, and it's all pretty much the same. It just works for the addict. Ultimately, if you're an addict and you want a solution to your problem, then you will find it, in that program, as far as I'm concerned. And I know there's lots of people out there that don't gel with it, and they use other means of recovery, and that's absolutely fine and cool. But I've worked in the substance misuse field now for over 5 years, I think about 5 or 6 years, and I'm not just biased because I've worked the 12 steps and I am a 12 stepper. I have actually honestly given all the other programs a really good look, and I've been open-minded to learning about the programs. But what the 12 steps seems to give people that the other programs don't necessarily give them is right. that faith, and what comes with that faith is peace of mind. The peace of mind that comes with being okay with whatever happens and being comfortable no matter what your circumstances are. That's something that I believe is completely priceless, and I'm not sure that you can have that without having a higher power in your life. What do you think?
I don't, and so it's funny that you say that, because I also have a degree in substance abuse counseling and have worked in the field, and I know for me and what I've seen work in other people's lives, I don't feel that it does work unless you have that higher power or that something bigger than you out there. I do feel like people kind of sometimes do get caught up on the word God and steer away, but it's really it's whatever you choose to make it, and it's the spirituality and the faith and the believing in something bigger to me that just makes the 12 steps work and be so successful in so many people's lives. I don't want to try it without it. Now that I have it, and you're right, whoever can do it differently, that's, I'm happy for them. But for this addict sitting in this spot, I can't do it without that something bigger.
No, me neither. I've tried it. I've tried it quite a few times during my recovery of turning my back on my higher power and doing it, taking my will back, as we say. And it just never works. I always end up feeling really, really shit. And
yeah.
It's similar to the situation recently, actually, when I went to that meeting on Tuesday. The person that was doing the chair, they were talking about, their experience of going through the steps, and she made this comment where she just said, as she was talking about a story, she said that her sponsor had said to her, where is God in your decision making? And it was like a real, when the light bulb goes off in your head. And I thought, I'm making a lot of decisions at the moment, and my higher power is nowhere to be seen, and I just realized that, I've massively taken my will back, and I'm just running the show. I'm just literally, I've got a really good life, and everything couldn't really be better. From an outsider's perspective looking in, you would think, right, well, he's got everything that he could possibly want, really, and I have, and I'm happy. And I said to my sponsor, 80% of the time at the moment, I'm more than happy, but 20% of the time, I'm feeling angry and I'm feeling restless and blah blah blah. And that is the answer to that. Night I came home and I sat and I meditated, and then I prayed, and I really, really meaningfully prayed to my higher power, and the answer came immediately to me, and I put the action in the next day, and now I feel great. So within 24 hours the problem was solved. And that's always been my experience. It doesn't always necessarily come within 24 hours, but it usually comes fairly quickly, whether it's just a direct intuition or whether it's a phone call from somebody else. But, it's always there. But it only works if you work it, as they say, doesn't it?
Right. Well, yeah. And, the thing that I truly love about being able to use the God of my understanding and my higher power is that I can get mad at him. There's been so many times I've just been sitting in my car and I'm like, you know what? I effing hate you today. And, like I can hear him going, it's okay. As long as you're still in contact with me, there's still that hope that that my will is going to be in there somewhere, because the minute, oh my gosh, the minute Emily tries to take control of anything and self-will it's not a good situation for anybody involved. Like,
I bet Sky Daddy's just laughing at you. I heard one. It was funny actually, because I sponsored a guy a couple of years ago who was obviously brand new to the fellowship, but he was very religious, and he'd been a Christian for many years, and he'd actually been training to be a priest, and he was very, very well versed in and not only in Catholicism, but also in kind of psychology. But it was interesting. I really enjoyed having conversations with him, and we were talking about this type of stuff, and he just said, well, the way I think of God is, he said, I just think of him as a parent. And he said, like, he is like any good parent, he shows me unconditional love. It doesn't matter how much abuse I give him. It doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter what I say to him or how I behave or anything like that. He'll always love me, and he'll always be there for me. And I thought, that is just a beautiful way of thinking about it. And it doesn't matter what your higher power is, how you conceive of it, or like what that mental image conjures up, but just to think about that kind of total benevolence and
right.
Just
Yeah.
No.
Well, I grew up super religious. I grew up in a very Catholic household as well, and my dad was actually a deacon in the Catholic Church. And in coming into my recovery, and in going through the God of my understanding, I had, and that's why I call him Sky Daddy, like I had to come up with something in my brain that was loving and fatherly and just forgiving, or it wasn't going to work for me. Like I need that person that I can be like, I hate you right now, and in my head I can just see them shaking their head and giving me a hug and saying, it's okay, Emily, that you hate me right now, because I'm not going to go anywhere. Like I thrive on that part of my higher power.
So I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to introduce you to my new sponsor, Bud's Life CBD patches. Now, Bud's Life CBD patches are completely legal in the UK. They don't contain any of the THC or have any psychoactive effects of cannabis. So these have got no psychoactive properties at all, which means that they're not a drug. They're actually a supplement. So these CBD patches take all the goodness that cannabis has to offer, but you don't have to worry about getting high. And they're just a fantastic way of managing anxiety or pain without any of the psychoactive effects. So if other methods of CBD supplementation haven't worked for you, then buying CBD patches in the US or the UK could be the best alternative. Go to www.budslife.co.uk, or you can check them out at instagram.com/budslifecbduk or facebook.com/budslifecbduk. And they are available in 16 milligrams, 32 milligrams and 50 milligram patches. And if you'd like to get 15% off your first order, just use the promo code Life in Recovery. So that's 15% off your first order. Just use the promo code Life in Recovery. Yeah. Well, you have to find whatever works for you, don't you? That's the key to this, is everybody has got a different concept. I mean, my concept of a higher power has changed over the years, and most recently because I love abstract art and I love like abstract thought, and I just came to the conclusion that I was going to call my higher power TOP, TOP, which stands for the organizing principle,
Uh-huh.
because I just imagine this, whatever this thing is, that it began everything and it is everything, and that just made sense to me, and I thought it was quite amusing. So, whenever I refer to my higher power now, I just refer to it as top.
Yeah. Yeah. I just kind of love, I'm really, really into nature, and that's where I'm blessed to be where I am here in Idaho, that anywhere I go, there's mountains and hot springs and, all kinds of things. And so in my meditation, I always, thank Mother Earth and welcome in Sky Daddy. And so I think that that's kind of, where I find that healing. And, and I invited him in before we started this. I invite him in every time I'm going to do, step work or journaling. And I'm just super grateful for like just the freedom that I have in this program. We were talking about this in a meeting the other night, that the only desire for membership is the desire to stop using, and it doesn't have to be like this perfect program, that it is so individually tailored towards each person under, the structure of just the 12 steps. But in each step, you just have the ability to kind of go and find yourself in the way that's comfortable for you. I really love that. And I feel like that's what, is different about, the 12-step programs than any other kind of program out there.
I know it's a day at a time, but do you feel like you've kind of turned a corner now then? Because you sound very much as though you've kind of got it really, like as in you've got the program, and you kind of sound, you sound like you have got a handle on you really, because ultimately when you work in the steps and you've got a bit of sobriety under your belt, like you do gain, well, it's a paradox, isn't it? Because you gain some level of control over yourself in a weird way. You kind of hand it over, don't you? But then kind of your higher power kind of hands your life back to you and says, okay, well, I'm always here, but you're now in control of your life in a way that you weren't able to do it before.
Right.
It almost gives you the choice, doesn't it? Like, I will no longer choose to use drugs, but I do have that choice, but I choose not to.
Right. And I also think it's like given me, because by no means, and I am under, like, there's no chance that I'm going to be well anytime soon. And, just like everybody, especially like you said, with like the times right now, and we all, by no means is my life in any resemblance of order. It's what the program and the steps and the recovery has given me is the ability to be able to kind of take a step back and be able to look at the thoughts that are going on in my head, and recognize behaviors, and just give me a moment to be able to, good, bad, or indifferent, kind of sit in that moment and be able to work my way through it without having to go off the deep end or feeling, because through childhood and adult trauma, you become to feel like all of your feelings are weird and negative and wrong, and you don't fit in. And I heard somebody say last night at a meeting that just because you feel it doesn't mean that it's reality. Now, you still have to work through your feelings, but it doesn't mean that whatever you're thinking in your head is reality. And the 12 steps is giving me the tools to like kind of sit back and be able to take an inventory over where I am that day and what is reality and what is my brain, on its addictive side, trying to separate me from other people and make me different so that I feel that I need to go out and use my addiction in any way. Because, like as much as I could, I can totally get thrown off on, opiates, but I can also get thrown off on buying shoes. You know what I mean? Like I can, my addiction can go in so many different ways in whatever it is at that quick moment, trying to fit, stop the way I feel.
Yeah, shoes aren't going to kill you though, are they?
No, I'm not going to go to jail for drinking coffee and buying shoes. So
Well,
I
this
feel
is
like
yeah, sorry, go on.
no, so I just feel like, as long as I'm not sticking a needle in my arm or something up my nose, that pair of shoes will be okay for that moment.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, what you just said there, I love the adage, God is in the pause. Like I was taught that very early on, and it's funny because off the back of the meeting that I went to that I mentioned earlier, and then speaking to people in the fellowship about this, I was saying, well, actually, I saw my sponsee last night, and we were talking about it, and I said to him, if you think about being kind of enlightened, which is something that we're probably never going to be in this lifetime, but those people that you would consider enlightened, I said, they are the people who can respond to their emotions rather than react to their emotions. And what that means is that they will feel their emotions, they will pause, they will respond appropriately to any given situation. So they'll always make the right choice. And I said, and that's what we need to work towards. I said, like, as time goes by, hopefully with, more meditation and more praying and more inventory and more service, that you will like progressively and gain that ability to pause and respond, and that's definitely been my experience. So when I'm kind of like really, really doing everything to the best of my ability, I tend to be very, very relaxed, and I tend to be able to have that ability. Even if somebody's being abusive towards me, I can not react to it and just kind of respond accordingly. But if I'm not feeling very well, or I've not been doing everything that I need to be doing, then I'll literally, as soon as somebody says something that I don't like, I can just revert back to type and just explode basically. Which has happened, and that's happened a few times recently, and I'm not proud of that, but that's just the truth. So whenever I'm reacting like that, I know that there's work that needs to be done, and it's we're a work in progress, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, I go to a regular therapist, I go to a trauma therapist, and I concentrate on my 12 steps, because through a lot of my childhood trauma and my adulthood, traumas and abuses that have happened to me, I learned to live my life in fight or flight. It became a huge defense mechanism to me, and I had to be clean for a little bit before my therapist would even remotely think about, sending me to my trauma therapist, because I'm doing EMDR, which, you kind of have to relive that situation and work on processing the emotional side and moving it over to the logical side so you don't get triggered so much. I had not realized how much I lived in trauma responses. And it's through that, all of those things that I'm working on together, that I am kind of able to take that pause and not lash out on other people because of something somebody did to me a long time ago. And the other thing that I'm really learning on how to pause is how I treat myself, because I am historically so mean to me. There's been that just self-loathing. And I feel like the program and the 12 steps and being able to create my higher power are teaching me to pause and be gentle on myself, and like just live in the moment I'm in and everybody that's around me, and just be like emotionally present in every little joy that's right in front of me.
Yeah, well, being present is the key, isn't it? Like, if you can live just life in the present moment and not be dragged into the past or sucked towards the future, then that is the most beautiful place to be, and definitely the sanest place to be as well.
Oh, yeah, it really is. Like, my brain is my brain is just interesting, because I can find myself being sitting in a moment, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I should apologize to the guy. I hurt their feelings in the in the 3rd grade. I'm never going to own my house in 20 years. How tall was Jesus? Do penguins have knees? Did I pay that bill? Where's my birth certificate? Like it just can go in 80 miles, each way. And then I'm missing out on like what's right in front of me.
Yeah. That's kind of power now stuff, isn't it? I remember reading Eckhart Tolle's book, like in fairly early recovery, and I didn't really get it. And then I read it again about 4 or 5 years later, and I could completely relate to everything that he was saying, because I'd obviously been through the steps by that point, and I was trying to live my life in that way. But yeah, it's really difficult. I mean, we do have, I think that we certainly have like supercharged egos and supercharged, like that washing machine head that we talk about in recovery. That is definitely going a million miles an hour and much faster than the average person's, I believe. But it will do, won't it? I mean, if you've got, like, I've always said this ever since I wrote a book in 2015, Addiction Prevention, which, I talked about the gradient of addiction, and it was very clear to me after working as a counsellor in prisons and speaking. Obviously, I've been in recovery for a few years, but then I came face to face with a very, very diverse mix of young men in prison, and they all, displayed attributes of the spiritual malady, but in varying degrees. And it became quite obvious that the more trauma a person had suffered, the more entrenched their addiction became. And then, not so long ago, I became aware of Vincent Folletti's work on the adverse childhood experiences, and that actually was then scientific proof about what I'd been thinking about for quite a few years. So for somebody like yourself, who's obviously been through not only childhood trauma, but adult trauma as well, it's no wonder that your addictions have taken you to sticking a needle in your arm. That just makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and it does. It makes sense to me. And I'm just glad that at this moment, and I'm so diligent, and like I live in a healthy fear of going back to that spot. And I have to remember, especially towards, the end, when I got to the point where, people say when I talk about, my suicide attempt, or my last one, is, that like, oh, you didn't want your life to stop. You just wanted the pain to stop. And no, I very much really wanted my life to stop. I really, really, in my head, was convinced that the world was better off without me. And I didn't want to live anymore. And I was a shell of a broken person. And I feel like I live in a healthy fear of ever going back to that spot. And the person that I am sitting here in this moment just hurts so deeply for that girl who, a little over a year ago just thought that she just wasn't meant to be, know?
Yeah. It's really interesting actually that you've just mentioned the suicide attempt, because I was thinking this when you first mentioned it. I've got this, like, I've heard a lot of people tell a lot of stories about trying to commit suicide, and I might be completely totally like off the money here, but this is just my feeling, my intuitive feeling, is that people who try to take their own lives, they're very, very rarely successful on the first or the second or even the third attempt. And it almost feels like God, whatever God is, whoever this higher power, whatever this higher power is, will not let a person just kill themselves. There's so many people that just don't actually follow, like, it just doesn't happen for whatever. Like, as an example, I've got a close friend of mine who decided he was going to kill himself. He loaded the gun, he put the shotgun to underneath his jaw, pulled the trigger, and the gun misfired. And that kind of thing, I hear those types of stories all the time. And obviously, eventually, if somebody keeps like trying it, eventually it's going to happen. But it almost seems like life itself, like the universe itself, just abhors suicide.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That was the last time I tried to kill myself was my second attempt within a calendar year. And both times were so very, very close. The first time I did it, like I remember like being in like a dreamlike state and like walking through this field and seeing yellow flowers and seeing a very father-like figure like give me a hug and then push me back. And then I woke up. And then I tried it again, and my fear was when I reached the point of this has got to stop, there's got to be a better way, is that I was going to keep trying until I got it right.
What were you doing? Did you overdose or?
The first time I hung myself.
Oh, wow.
And the second time I took a bunch of pills. I got in a bathtub and I slit my wrists.
So obviously your higher power was looking after you because you're still here.
Yeah. And that's why I really do. I'm so grateful for my recovery. And I do feel that each and every one of us who have found recovery, we are such miracles, because so many of us should have died so many times. And our higher power chose to keep us here. And it's a beautiful thing to me. And the fact that there's just recovery all over the world. And during the pandemic, when it was on Zoom, and it still is on Zoom, you can get on Zoom and you can go to a meeting another continent away, and there's another room full of 30 other people who have the same goals and experiences and drive to live.
Yeah, and it's a mad experience. That it doesn't matter where you go to in the world, it is literally exactly the same in every single room. Even when they don't, even I've been to rooms like in Sweden, for example, where they were speaking a foreign language, and I still felt exactly the same as I would when I was in a meeting in the UK. It's just incredible. I think the thing to remember, and not just for yourself, but this is for anybody that's listening to this, and this is my belief, is that, you know, the reason, the whole reason for recovery is to live a life of meaning, is to figure out in recovery what your meaning and purpose is. Because once you do that, once you've, you know, whether it's the career or the family or whatever it is that is going to give your life purpose and meaning that will fulfill you, essentially, because that's what we need. We need to be fulfilled. And I think that, again, the 12 steps is very, very clear in the way that you find that is by helping other people. And that
absolutely.
That might not necessarily be everybody else's path, but for me, it's very clear that once a person starts helping others in any way, shape or form, it completely transforms their life. And, you know, like, you go from being somebody who, like I was, somebody who I didn't even realize had very, very low self-esteem, to somebody who has got, who feels has a life of esteem because I try to put other people first. And whenever I'm not doing that, that's always when I start to feel shit. If I'm thinking about, like you said, I'm just as much an addict these days of like buying clothes as I've always been, but I have to limit myself now. So each month I have a budget that I can spend, and that's
right.
it. But guaranteed, as soon as that budget is released on that day of the month, I'll spend it.
Oh, absolutely. But trust me, I can find anything that I find something that I like, or like say I'm interested in winter vests. Well, I'll get one, and then I'll need another color, and then I'll need another texture. Like, I can just go in any direction in whatever's making me happy at that moment.
Exactly the same. I have like a list now. I've created a list of things that I want to buy, and it's probably about, I don't know, 20 items on this list. It'll last me about 2 years.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing that I have found too is, finding a hobby has been very, it's been very beneficial. I played disc golf, and I love doing it, but you would not believe how many things I now need to play disc golf. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I need this. It's just. But like you say, I'm not going to go to jail for playing disc golf.
You've got to have the right kit.
Yeah, I got to have the right discs. I got to have the right shoes. I got to look cute when I'm out there. I got to have a beanie. It's just the list is endless.
Yeah. Well, I think that part of this as well with recovery is self-acceptance. I mean, when you can say, well, this is how I am, and laugh about it as well, and say, yes, I do enjoy buying clothes, and yes, I do enjoy listening, buying music or whatever it is that floats your boat. The chances are you're probably going to do that obsessively. But is buying clothes going to kill you? No, it's not. I don't know. Is playing disc golf going to kill you? Definitely not.
Right.
And so it's you've just got to weigh all this stuff up, haven't you? And if that's what makes you happy, if you want to be a disc golf addict and play it 7 days a week, and that means that you're not going to be injecting heroin and snorting cocaine, then
right, yeah. So it was last weekend. It was snowing here in Boise, and you better believe that I was out there trying to throw discs in the snow.
So, what does life in recovery mean to you then, Emily?
Life in recovery for me today is giving me a chance to live again and to want to be alive and want to notice all the beautiful things in front of me. I have 3 beautiful children who I love, and they deserve me here. And I deserve to see all of their wonderful milestones as they continue to grow. And my addiction took that from me. My addiction took my love for myself and doubted my purpose in being their mother. And recovery means for me learning to love myself again and realizing that I wasn't a mistake and that I have this beautiful future with my beautiful children. I love my husband very much. I'm very, very, very proud of him and his recovery journey. And life in recovery is giving me back the opportunities and giving me the chance to move forward into a life full of sunshine and color.
Awesome. And what would you say for anybody that might be struggling out there or thinking about making a change or anything really to do with changing their life a little bit or dealing with their addictions? What advice would you give?
I know that it's so scary and it seems so hard, but you just put the first foot forward. Like they say in our meetings, the only desire for membership is the desire to stop using, and just start one day at a time and find your niche. And don't doubt yourself and don't doubt your own strength, because through abstaining and through recovering and growing as a person, you'll find out that you're a stronger person than you ever give yourself credit for. But you have to start somewhere. So just start living.
Lovely. Well, thanks very much for spending the time today, Emily. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And
it's been amazing.
I hope that you continue with your recovery and good luck for the future.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. You take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening, and if you've been affected by any of the issues discussed in the podcast, please see a range of mutual aid organisations in the show notes. Also, don't forget that you can support the Life in Recovery podcast by visiting patreon.com/lifeinrecovery, and the podcast is sponsored by Dennis Berry Life Coaching. Go to www.dennisberry.com for your free consultation and use the code words Life in Recovery to get 10% off your next 3 sessions. Also, go to www.sugaraddiction.com/lifeinrecovery and download your free copy of the Last Resort Sugar Detox Guide. And if you're really serious about quitting sugar, check out his 30-day Sugar Freedom Challenge whilst you are there. The podcast is also sponsored by Helios Recovery Services, the Recovery Coach Training Academy. Visit www.heliosrecovery.com to register for the Digital Recovery Coach Academy and Ethics Training, which is on January the 25th to January the 30th, 2021. And when you register, use the code words Life in Recovery to get 10% off the package price. And don't forget, you can get 15% off CBD patches to help you with stress and anxiety if you go to budslife.co.uk and use the promo code Life in Recovery. Peace and love, and goodbye for now.